Welcome to the Avenue 2020 Virtual Open Day, supported by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. I'm Tony Griffiths, the Heritage Project Manager, and I'm delighted to welcome you here today to showcase some of the exciting research and activities that have been going on here at Avenue St Andrews United Reformed Church in Southampton. So let's get started with an introduction by Reverend Dr. Sarah Hall. Enjoy.
Welcome to the sanctuary of Avenue St Andrews United Reformed Church in Southampton. I'm the Minister, Sarah Hall. Back in 2015, a church management meeting looked at the state of our turret, an iconic landmark on the avenue, one of the main roads into Southampton, and concluded that as well as using our own resources, we would need external help to refurbish and make it safe. Since then, by the generosity of many expressed through our Avenue 2020 project, we've seen both refurbishment of our turret and installation of proper storage for our church archives, the fruit of 6 parent congregations. But through the help of a grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, we have done so much more, exploring our church's history, not only with the congregation, but much more widely. Like many such projects, there have been setbacks, COVID-19 not the least of them, but there have been so many high points on the way. We've explored the music of hymn writer Isaac Watts, the father of English hymnody, whose own father was a minister in one of our parent congregations. Starting from Watts's gift of making complex religious ideas understandable, we've taken photos of God's creation celebrated by his works. We've written words inspired by his poetry. We've researched the design principles of James Cubitt, the famous nonconformist architect of our church building, whose designs helped congregations to see and hear better. And we've brought to light an amazing story stored in our archives of the church and our local community in Southampton, working together to support soldiers during the First World War. Today, you'll be able to follow our church heritage trail virtually, though sadly not physically. I do hope it won't be too long before you can visit us in person. But a virtual celebration is still a celebration. So I hope you'll enjoy your time with us, including a musical treat inspired by Isaac Watts. For, as he himself said, poesy and oratory omit things not essential and inserts little beautiful digressions in order to place everything in the most effective light.
This is a guided tour of the Heritage Trail and 8 interpretation banners around Avenue St Andrews United Reformed Church. Designed and produced as part of the Avenue 2020 project. There are also a series of QR codes on the banners and the Heritage Trail. These allow you to explore more about the church, its history and the project. The links for these will be posted in the comments box at the end of the event, so stick around and have a look. The Trail and Banner series starts here in the focus room. The Avenue 2020 project explores the history and heritage of Avenue St Andrews United Reformed Church, a church that helps. The project was inspired by the desire to preserve, research and celebrate the history of this church. This exhibition showcases the hard work of the project team and volunteers, focusing on themes of architecture, music and history. As part of the project, essential building works took place to make the church tower safe and to protect the treasures in the archives. In addition, it explored the music of hymn writer Isaac Watts, who is known as the father of English hymnody and whose father was a minister in one of this church's parent congregations. It's researched the design principles of James Cubitt, the famous nonconformist architect of the church building, whose designs helped congregations to see and hear services better. It's developed resources for primary school education, bringing to life the story told in the archives of the church and local communities supporting soldiers during the First World War. Those involved with the project have researched, shared and celebrated the history through an action-packed timeline of workshops, visits and events. Highlights include hosting school visits, exploring the Special Collections Archive at Hartley Library, University of Southampton, and providing musical workshops designed to inspire creativity in the community. Overall, Avenue 2020 has promoted an enjoyable experience for a wide range of people who have learned about the church's story as part of their own local history. Now we'll head into the concourse to learn more about this project. If we look out of the window into the church courtyard, we can see the sculpture of Isaac Watts. This sculpture was saved from the facade of one of Avenue St Andrew's parent churches known as Above Bar Chapel. It was bombed during the Second World War. The sculpture was moved several times, first to the Tudor House Museum, then to St Andrew's Presbyterian Church, formerly on the corner of Brunswick Place and Dorset Street, and finally it arrived here at Avenue St Andrew's United Reformed Church. Isaac Watts was born in Southampton in 1674. As a child, he worshipped at Above Bar Chapel, a parent church of Avenue St Andrew's URC, where his father was a minister. Watts became famous for rewriting psalms and used simple language to help people better understand them. He wrote over 700 hymns, and many are still used in church services today, including O God, Our Help in Ages Past, and When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. Watts was also well known for his poetry, and he wrote many verses for children. A parody of his poem, How Doth the Little Busy Bee, features in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, playfully reimagined as How Doth the Little Crocodile. Isaac Watts was a famous poet, hymn writer, minister and theologian. He became known as the father of English hymnody and gave his first sermon at the age of 24 at Above Bar Chapel. Watts was educated at King Edward VI Grammar School, Southampton, and a line from one of his best-known hymns, Our God, Our Help in Ages Past, features as the title of Peter Jones's book, The Stormy Blast. This tells the story of 5 members of the school during the First World War. One chapter is on Owen Hobbs, who was also a member of Avenue Church. He is remembered alongside other casualties of the war on the War Memorial, and we'll see that in just a moment. Later in life, Watts was an inspiring preacher and writer, living first in London and then in Hertfordshire, where he died in 1748. A memorial statue was unveiled in Southampton in 1861 to commemorate him, and the Civic Centre clock chimes a verse of O God, Our Help every 4 hours during the day. We have celebrated the links between the church and Isaac Watts through a series of workshops to widen the understanding and appreciation of Watts' legacy in the local community and beyond. Led by professional musician and songwriter Louise Jordan, 3 groups explored themes from Watts' work, including the natural world, childhood, and Watts' Cradle hymn. Each group worked over 2 sessions to produce their own poems and song lyrics. In another activity, photographs taken by members of the church were used to produce an artist response inspired by Watts' quote, "Nature with open volume stands, to spread her Maker's praise abroad." Some of the images are displayed here for you to enjoy. Let's head into the sanctuary to learn more about the building and its architect James Cubitt. Avenue St Andrews United Reformed Church has a rich family tree. Its origins can be traced back to 1688, when Above Bar Chapel was founded in the centre of Southampton. The archive now cares for records from Above Bar Chapel and 5 other parent congregations. This building was originally known as Avenue Congregational Church, and the first minister was Reverend Arthur Davis Martin. It was founded in 1892 by members of Albion Congregational Church, a daughter church of Above Bar Chapel. The founders bought the land and opened a temporary church. They set up a Sunday school and established, of course, a committee to oversee the planning of a brand new church building. Several architects submitted plans for the new church, but the designs of James Cubitt, who had designed the iconic Union Chapel in Islington, received every vote. A local company from Beaverstown, Southampton was chosen to build the new church, and the foundation stone was laid in 1897. The spacious and friendly arrangement of the building provided a spiritual home for those living in the surrounding area, including high-status properties in Wynn and Westwood Roads, as well as more modest houses in Alma Road, Avenue Road, and other parts of Bevis Mount. The church officially opened in December 1898. It was the first public building to have electrical lighting. It remains one of the few churches to have survived the Second World War bombing of Southampton. Avenue St Andrews United Reformed Church as it is today was formed in 1986, when the members of Avenue and St Andrews joined together to worship in this building. In keeping with the late Gothic style, James Cubitt designed this building to be stately and ample. One of its most striking features is the prominent red brick tower, which houses a unique ventilation shaft and is of a similar design to the one used in Cubitt's masterpiece at Union Chapel. In contrast to the grand style of the building, the inside of the church is described by historian Clyde Binfield as friendly and homely. At the heart of Cubitt's design was the desire to create a space where people could easily see and hear the church services from wherever they were sitting. Cubitt carefully planned the placement of the stone pillars and positioned the pulpit, where the minister stood to preach, to one side, so that everyone could see it. To help them hear well, Cubitt designed the nave where the congregation sits to have the perfect height for good acoustics. These design principles continue to benefit the congregation, musicians, and other community groups using the sanctuary today. Now we will cross over to the opposite corner of the church to see the War Memorial and to find out about the church and the First World War. The War Memorial was unveiled on the 3rd of April 1921. The carving and details were designed in the English Gothic style, inspired by work of the period found principally in Hampshire. The central panel of the memorial is made from bronze and contains the names of 16 members of the church who fought and died during the First World War. The inscription reads, "To the glorious memory of those who gave their lives for their country and the cause of righteousness in the Great War, 1914 to 1918. The case below the memorial contains the Second World War Church Memorial Book. Documents from the church archives tell the remarkable story of how the local church community supported thousands of soldiers who passed through the avenue during the First World War. Within days of war being declared in 1914, soldiers had set up camp on Southampton Common, and columns of troops marched down the avenue towards the docks, ready to embark for France. One rainy evening, church members noticed some forlorn-looking soldiers on the common writing letters home, using each other's backs as desks. The next day, the Avenue Hall was opened for the troops, and there they received a hearty welcome. The story of 5 years' work had begun and was supported by church members, volunteers, businesses and townspeople. As well as providing entertainment, items such as stationery, tobacco, socks and books provided much-needed comfort to soldiers. They were also provided with hot meals, essential items and the facilities to write letters home, wash, shave and dry their clothes. It was one of Southampton's most remarkable contribution to the war effort on the home front. The charitable efforts of the church and community were recognised at the highest levels. Clive Wigram, Assistant Private Secretary to King George V, wrote, "I am to assure you of the King's appreciation for the splendid work done in Southampton, for the troops embarking overseas." The church archives cover 6 parent congregations and Avenue St Andrews United Reformed Church. They are a rich resource from which to explore the history and heritage, as well as for those working on local and family histories. In 2012, a reorganisation of the archives unearthed treasures relating to the First World War. The Soldier's Book records over 3,127 of the approximately 40,000 soldiers who passed through the doors of the Avenue Hall from August 1915 to November 1918. It is believed to be the only surviving volume out of an original set of 12. The record of 5 years' work is printed at the request of volunteers from the Avenue Hall. This booklet documents the work that took place here. It includes photographs, a list of helpers and subscribers, and the names of the regiments who used the hall. The Avenue Free Churchman magazine. These monthly magazines are over 100 years old. They include wartime letters from the minister to church members at home and serving overseas, and information on all the Avenue Hall activities. There are also letters from soldiers detailing their lives in active service and reminiscing about their time at the Avenue Hall.
Hi, I'm Roger, one of the volunteers. I first became aware of the project in early 2019 when I was approached for background information that would be used in support of the National Lottery bid. Having researched Congregationalism in Edwardian Hampshire for a PhD in modern church history, I was already familiar with certain aspects of the early history of what was then Avenue Congregational Church. Becoming a volunteer, however, has enabled me to explore in far greater depth what happened between the founding of the church in 1892 and the opening of the new building in 1898. Thus, for me, a highlight has been to discover how much dedication and commitment from every section of the congregation brought to fruition the leadership's vision of extending nonconformity in newly developed suburbs of Southampton.
Within days of war being declared, this common began to fill up with soldiers. And the story goes that 3 ladies were out walking one evening when they saw men on the common writing letters in the pouring rain, using each other's backs for desks. They asked the church across the road, which is now known as Avenue St Andrews, to open up a hall. And that was the start of an astonishing charitable effort involving hundreds of thousands of letters, as well as meals, clothing and shelter. We know all this because of a report discovered in the church archives.
It falls to my lot as secretary to give the report of the 5 years' work of the Avenue Hall for soldiers and sailors. From the first, everything was provided free of charge. Stationery, food and cigarettes, met by donations of a generous and sympathetic public and by the troops themselves.
The logistics of this is amazing, absolutely amazing.
Church member Maureen Payne has been sorting through documents long buried away in storage.
We knew we had the archives, but they were in a huge mess because as people donated items, they were just sort of shoved in and pushed. So we had a mammoth task of actually sorting through. And while we were doing that, we came across this wonderful book called A Record of 5 Years' Work for the Avenue Hall for Soldiers and Sailors, Southampton.
From the very early days, certain comforts began to appear and disappear. Socks, shirts, scarves, gloves, mittens, helmets.
You know, I get very emotional when I actually describe what is in this book. The work that went on was astounding.
From many sources, but particularly noteworthy, was the kindness of Dr. Bath, who most generously contributed a gallon of milk daily for several years. Mr. Rose's celebrated collection of 60 razors and Mr. Knight's constant attendance in the washing department for many months are memorable, the latter stripping his fine orchard to provide the men with vast quantities of apples.
If you sort of see some of the things that were given out, they're talking of 27,000 letters, then the next 40,000 letters.
On the record day, 3,500 were written and posted. Once a man dumped in a bit of paper with an address on it and said, "Here, write to my missus." "But what must I say?" asked the helper. "Dunno, that's as you like." And off he went. But the lady was equal to the task and sent messages of love from the husband and a statement as to how nice he looked in his new khaki and that he was well and happy.
In fact, both a local VAD worker and the church had noticed that the men were hungry. It seemed that the army didn't have enough food. By the end of 1914, the church was serving regular meals.
It was soon found that many soldiers arrived from considerable distances, and in many cases they had had no food for several hours. One or two ladies began to bring baskets of provisions, and the Avenue Church Tea Committee undertook to provide meals regularly.
It was discovered by an enthusiastic ambulance worker that the thousands of troops who were being brought to Southampton and stationed on the Common in tents for one night before their departure to France were very badly wanting a canteen where they could obtain a hot drink and some food for free.
Large numbers of men just arrived on the Common came to the hall to seek their first meal after a fast of some hours. Then, indeed, the resources of the establishment and the strength and patience of the workers were strained to the utmost, and they never failed. On one day we catered for a passing division and for many hundreds who came to the camp.
There are stories of one Good Friday. The congregation came out of church, realised that 1,200 men had just arrived on the Common, had not been fed. So they approached the commandant and said, "We can feed 200 of them." 200 were sent. The commandant made a mistake. He sent another 200, then another 200. And eventually, as the chairs and tables became vacant, the other 600 were fed. This is Good Friday.
We had to trouble bakers and milkmen at 10:30 on Good Friday evening. Messrs. Lohman Brothers then, as always, supplied us with whatever we needed at any hour. Without their ready cooperation, we should often have failed. Every guest had a good meal and some cigarettes. They were abundantly grateful and gave the hall a tremendous cheer on marching off next day.
It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there.
In December 1914, the first attempt to feed divisions on the march from Winchester or Hursley to the docks was made. Often they could not stop. Then, as far as possible, food and drink were handed to the men as they marched, and the cups were collected some hundreds of yards down the avenue. Frequently trams brought back the empties hours afterwards.
The ladies put up tables all the way up to Wynn Road, all the way down the avenue, They had portable heaters so they could heat up the water. They were handing out cups of tea to the soldiers marching past, who would then drop their cups further down the avenue. The tram drivers would pick the cups up and bring them back to the halls. If the soldiers were mounted, the ladies held the trays above their heads, even in the rain, and sometimes they weren't just wet with rain, it was the tea.
We are often asked how many men used the hall. We had 2,000 men per night in the hall for some time. The visitors' book contains 40,000 signatures, but obviously they are not 1/10 of the total.
For 5 years, hundreds of thousands of men visited the church, and they signed the church register. It was another book found in the archives. Just one volume of the original 12 remains.
It starts on Thursday, August the 31st, 1915, and ends in November 1915, the beginning of November 1915. There are 3,127 signatures in it, with their names, home addresses, their regiments and their numbers. What an incredible record. You look through this. These were twins, James Gillespie, John Gillespie, consecutive numbers. I'm sure they were twins. One came back, the other didn't, because I looked them up on their war memorials. You get this poignant thing. This guy's name caught me. I don't know why. Peter Nicol, Lance Corporal, number 820, Gordon Highlanders. So I looked up the Gordon Highlanders. He died 3 weeks after he visited our halls. I can't describe it. You know what this book represents. It's a privilege to have this. It really is.
Letter from Clive Wigram, Assistant Private Secretary to George V. I have laid before the King your booklet entitled A Record of 5 Years' Work, and I am to assure you of the King's appreciation of the splendid work done in Southampton for the troops embarking for overseas.
Letter from the American Consul, Colonel Albert Swarm, to the Reverend Spencer, Avenue Congregational Church. September the 14th, 1919. I note in the Churchman that the Avenue Rest Hall has closed its doors. On behalf of the many men who wore the uniform of my country's army, and who found welcome, care, and shelter in the hall in times of stress and need, I beg to thus record my deepest appreciation. The hall was the last English home for the multitude that used it to send a last message home before taking on the journey that led into dire battle, and for so many of them to the great test of the waiting beyond.
I close with a personal incident. Not long ago, I was walking in London when a porter shook hands and said, "Ain't you from Southampton? Ain't you the vicar of that little red church with the tin hut on the common?" "Well," he said, "I came into that hut 2 years ago feeling bad. But I went into the hall, it was bright and warm, there was plenty of good food, and the ladies were like friends, and spoke to you as if you were a gentleman. And what's more, I met others out there who said just the same about the place. So what I says is, God bless Avenue Hall and everybody that worked there, and gave new life to us poor chaps."
Dear Mother, I am so elated that I am writing to you. It was raining outside, but a group of ladies brought me inside St Andrew's Church. I don't know if you received my last letter, but I hope this letter will tell you more about what I'm doing. Today has been such a long day, but I've managed to complete it. The memories keep coming back into my head, and all that is left in my heart is broken into pieces. At first, the trenches sounded exciting and fun, but when the day had come, it changed in my life, knowing it was time to fight. I know that tomorrow is another day, but I hope I will improve. I hope in the future I'll be more prepared for when something important is coming up and be grateful for what I do. I hope I get to talk to you later. Goodbye. Sincerely, your son.
Dear Mother and Father, writing to you now is like a dream come true. I am so glad I can finally talk to you. We have to fight for our country, so I hope that you are proud of me. All I want to say to you now is that I wish I could come home soon to see you. Representing our family, I promise that I won't let you down. I arrived at St Andrew's Church and I am having a cup of tea. 3 young kind ladies spotted me and my troop writing letters in the pouring rain, so they offered us shelter. I feel like my mind is visualising my oncoming death as I hear my fellow brothers talking to each other about the war. It feels like all my thoughts and feelings are about to escape. All the courses that we have done in our training so far makes my body feel mentally and physically tired. What am I to do next? How am I to cope with this? Our training is coming to an end and tomorrow we will hopefully start our travel to France. I am sorry that when we reach France, I will rarely be able to write to you. But one thing I promise is that I will make you proud. From your dearest Habiba.
Dear Mother, I know you're mad at me for leaving, but I had to. I had to fight for my country. If I hadn't signed up, I would become a coward. Soon enough, the remaining men will be forced to join, even if they say no. Surrounded by darkness, I know the journey ahead will be long and dangerous. Scared, I sit and reflect on the decisions I've made and ask myself over and over again, why? Exhausted from training, I'm sitting in St Andrew's Church, grabbing a few minutes rest before another grilling in the freezing weather. And the church is crowded with soldiers awaiting their fate. I'm feeling claustrophobic. This overwhelming rain pounds on the windows as dread fills my body. Fear controls my mind, but I know I have to be strong, to make you proud. Determination. You will see me through the tough days, and knowing I have of you to welcome me home toughens me. Training is the hardest thing I've to experience. Days are long, but nights are even longer. The next part of my journey will start soon, and that is when the real challenge begins. I am hoping to write again with updates, send my love to everyone back home, and make sure they know they are in my heart always. Yours truly, Oscar.
Dearest cousin and family, I have received a letter from you in the church and soon I will be setting off on this unknown path which might never let me come back. This may mean this is my last letter to you and my family. Every time I have a vision of home, I know I'm not the only one that is going through these horrible conditions and moments which make me hesitate to go to war. My fellow comrades will help me when I need it because we are one large family working together, training together and writing together. For now, I'm thankful to 3 women who have allowed us to stay within the church, providing us with resources like food and water. My training, which is every day, makes me soak until I am drenched with water, climbing, falling, running and shooting as well. My leader is strict as any leader. Days have passed and men have gotten more exhausted, and yet we have a long way to go. I am feeling this war will be the last thing I see until I leave this world. Dearest cousin, I hope this is not true, and one day I will return to meet you and my family. Run for
One theme that appears through much of Isaac Watts's work is that of the natural world. the Reverend Dr. Sarah Hall sent me a collection of photographs taken by members of the community responding to this theme, which forms the inspiration for this piece of music. 2 of the photographs, taken by 2 different photographers, are of the comma, a type of butterfly. I imagined that they were the same butterfly, and this piece charts its journey, flying over all of the other flora and fauna captured in this collection of images. Isaac Watts was a prolific writer of hymns. He wrote the words which composers then set to music. Through the Avenue 2020 project, I led a programme of writing workshops. There was much discussion of Watts's life. Although he didn't marry, he's very passionate about his love for Jesus Christ, which you can hear in this hymn. Watts wanted to transform hymns from relying on biblical texts so that the congregation could relate to the human experience of a lived faith. I wanted this setting of Watts's hymn to feel impassioned and raw, expressing a deep and real form of love.
When strangers stand and hear me tell what beauties in my Saviour dwell, where he is gone, they fain would know that they may seek and love him too. My best beloved keeps his throne on hills of light in worlds unknown, but he descends and shows his face in the young gardens of his grace. In vineyards planted by his hand, where fruitful trees in order stand, he feeds among the spicy beds, where lilies show their spotless heads. He has engrossed my warmest love, no earthly charms my soul can move, and shows me where his glories are. No chariot of a minadib the heavenly raptures can describe. Oh, may my daily spirit rise on wings of faith above the skies, till death shall make my last remove, to dwell forever with my love.
Isaac Watts wrote a poem called The Cradle Hymn, which has been set to music already by a number of composers. It seems to be a lullaby starting, "Hush, my dear, lie still and slumber." It tells the story of the Nativity, comparing a child lying in arms with Jesus Christ's less fortunate journey into the world. For the child being rocked to sleep, all thy wants are well supplied, whereas Jesus Christ was born in a manger, amongst the danger of large animals. This led me to question who lullabies are written for, the sleeping baby or the carer, reassuring them that they are doing all they can for the safety and security of the child. I thought of some of the dangers and concerns that carers may have today and decided to write a modern take on Isaac Watts' Cradle Hymn.
Rest your head upon my shoulder. There's no rush, take your time. I'm here to keep you and protect you. I'll make everything alright. Sleep securely, always knowing I can give you all you need. I'll shelter you from every weather. I'll guard you while you dream. The world outside may seem uncertain. Everything feels so unknown. But trust me when I promise you I'll be beside you as you grow. It's for your greatest freedom, so you can live a peaceful life. I'll take on any risk or danger. I'll make any sacrifice. I wish you joy, deep fulfillment. May your horizons be ever vast. Wherever your own adventure takes you, I pray you don't grow up too fast.
Isaac Watts wrote many poems for children, and one of the best known is called How Doth the Little Busy Bee. It's about the virtue of hard work over idle hands, and about the importance of being accountable for how a person spends their time. I found that Lewis Carroll had parodied this in his verse, How Doth the Little Crocodile, which appears in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I've written my own versions of this about different members of the animal kingdom. To make it musically entertaining, I've used some musical jokes like chromatics, and also some short, sharp staccato notes. I've tried to give it a very strong beat so that you can tap or dance along with it if you like.
How doth the brightly feathered bird improve the power of its speech? It listens into every word, not just to those you teach. How patiently it bides its time, how neatly preens its feathers, while saving up its rudest line for a family get-together. How doth the gentle land snail enjoy each passing hour, and spread its tiny mucus trail amongst the garden flowers. How cleverly it moves through time and space on a single muscular foot, taking life at its own pace, stopping for fruit en route. How doth the slender meerkat improve the life of its mob? Taking turns like a democrat, its focus remains on the job. How carefully it handles a scorpion, how neatly removes the tail. Stands sentry like a champion before warning the group with a wail. How doth the nimble mountain goat improve its lot in life? All wrapped up in a long warm coat to adapt to mountain heights. How graceful its jumps in cloven hooves, how neatly it stays balanced, sure-footed with each and every move, a triumph of steely endurance.
Many of Isaac Watts's hymns follow a similar format, 4 lines of equal length using an alternate rhyme scheme. The first and third lines rhyme, as do the second and fourth. In one workshop, we looked for examples where Watts uses a different format. This hymn, The Day of Judgment, is described by Watts as being attempted in English Sapphic, meaning that each line has 5 or 6 pulses or stresses, except the fourth, which is shorter. This hymn issues a stark warning, so I wanted it to be brooding, urgent and concerning. The fourth line of each verse has a long vowel sound, which I emphasise over a descending line which runs downwards to conjure up the depth and devils of hell.
When the fierce north wind with his airy forces rears up the Baltic to a foamy fury, and the red lightning with a storm of hail comes rushing amain down, how the poor sailors stand amazed and tremble, while the hoarse thunder like a bloody trumpet roars a loud onset to the gaping waters, quick to devour them. Such shall the noise be and the wild disorder, if things eternal may be like these earthly, such the dire terror when the great archangel shakes the creation, tears the strong pillars of the vault of heaven, breaks up old marble, the repose of princes. See the graves open and the bones are rising, flames all around them. Hark the shrill outcries of the guilty wretches, lively bright horror and amazing anguish stare through their eyelids, while the living worm lies gnawing within them. Thoughts like old vultures prey upon their heartstrings, and the smart twinges when their eye beholds the lofty judge frowning, and a flood of vengeance rolling for him. Hopeless immortals, how they scream and shiver, while devils push them to the pit, wide yawning, hideous and gloomy, to receive them headlong down to the centre. Stop here, my fancy, all away, ye horrid, doleful ideas, come arise to Jesus, how he sits godlike, and the saints around him, throned yet adoring. Oh, may I sit here when he comes triumphant, dooming the nations, then ascend to glory, while our hosannas all along the passage shout the Redeemer.
This piece is about Isaac Watts's connections to Southampton. His statue in West Park is overlooked by the Civic Centre, from where the bells of the clock tower chime out one of his most famous hymns every day. Listening to the bells, I wondered how Watts might feel hearing his music resonate across the city and around his statue. When writing this piece, I imagined the bells bouncing around the city's buildings and decaying. Whilst some memories fade over time, Watts's statue and music continue to be a real part of the fabric of the city. Can you hear Watts's most famous hymn in this piece?
Resound around the park, chime 4 times to mock the passing day. Circle the figure stood in stone, the son of Southampton reclaimed. Bells resound around the park, chime 4 times to mock the passing day. Circle the figure stood in stone, a son of Southampton reclaimed.
Hello, I'm Joan McGavin, and this poem is called Watts Muses in Old Age. In fact, it's an acrostic poem. I think most of you will know what an acrostic is, but in case you're not sure, it's a poem where each line begins with the different letter of a name or a word. And in fact, Isaac Watts wrote an acrostic on his own name. So this one's an acrostic on his name as well. First line begins with I, second begins with S, third begins with A, and so on. So here's Watts Muses in Old Age. I saw a vision of a better world, shimmering as clouds unfurled, and let me glimpse eternity all across Southampton sea, calm and bright. I wrote it free. Where once folk sang without much thought and little joy, I wrote and taught through hymns God's word in such plain sight that each should know and voice delight. Sing God's praises day and night.
Bells by Jane Freeland. This poem was written for the Isaac Watts Poetry Workshop earlier in the year. The first letters of each line spell Isaac Watts' name. The poem can also be sung to the tune of O God Our Help in Ages Past. It imagines that on the 3rd of November 1933, on the occasion of the inauguration of the Civic Centre Tower Block, the statue of Isaac Watts hears the Civic Centre clock playing his hymn. I hear bells chime across the park, sounding my very words, and then the tolling of a clock, and flights of startled birds. Catching among the barren trees, with gusty rush they came, across these 80 years and 12, those words by bells remade. Time's not an ever-rolling stream, bearing its sons away. It spirals, circles and repeats, and never is decayed.
Thank you for tuning in to the Avenue 2020 Virtual Open Day. The recording of today's events will remain on the Avenue St Andrews URC Facebook page, so you can return to rewatch your favourite bits or share them with friends. Check out the comments box now for some useful links to more information about the church and this project. If you have any comments, questions or feedback, please do leave us a note in the comments box. We're really keen to hear from you. But for now, goodbye.